Theresa Tyree is a queer, non-binary Greek woman who spends their days coming up with new stories of queer perseverance and hope. They live near Portland, Oregon, with their platonic life partner and cat. She has particular interest in writing the missing scenes of Greek mythology that empower marginalized people. Yours, Theresa.
Marvelous. Tonight's story is one of those. Unbound is a story about Medusa, reborn in the guise of an archaeology student named Bee, who after the end of the Second World War seeks to prove that ancient Greek marbles were originally painted. When Bee's research project is shot down again by her close-minded department head at a fundraising concert in the British Museum, Zoe Makris, the star allos player of archaeology band The Children of the Gods, comforts her. This was one of my favorite places to hide too. Bee jumped and quickly lowered her legs to be more ladylike. She relaxed when she recognized Zoe in the half-light. "Dr. Makris, won't they miss you at the event?" "Zoe is fine." She smiled and leaned against the wall. "And nah, it's wrapping up and my team's authorized to stay a bit longer to get our instruments and audio equipment packed up before the museum locks up. I'd rather be with you." Bee dashed a hand across her eyes. "Forgive me, I didn't..." Zoe held up a hand. "No need to apologize. You have every right to offload your feelings with a few tears. What that man said was hurtful and ignorant." Bee's spirits lifted to hear someone else say it. "You think so?" "I know so. Peter isn't wise enough to understand he's bulldozing perspectives outside his limited worldview." Zoe placed her hand on Bee's knees and guided them to the side to make room for her to sit down in the alcove with Bee. "When I was a little girl, I lived at a tiny Greek village near the Turkish border. My history lessons covered wars between the two countries they don't talk about here. I went on school trips to see destroyed temples, stolen and returned artifacts, like the allos I play, actually. The Turks stole it from a temple of Athena, but returned it during the first peace accords. Knowing all that made me wise, like Athena's serpents licking my ears clean enough to hear the secrets of the universe." She gave Bee a wry smile. "I weaponized all of that to get through Peter's program, and he wasted my time. He's wasting yours too. You don't have to play his game." Bee squeezed the material of her dress between her fingers. "I wish that were true." Zoe gave her a soft look. "I think you're right, by the way. None of the men in charge do." Zoe chuckled. "Well, they haven't seen as many unprocessed relics as I have. Who's to say you aren't meant to surpass them anyway, like Athena did Zeus? Zeus had swallowed Metis because her child was prophesied to overthrow him. I heard some of the other patrons repeating what you said to Peter at the beginning of the night. Take it as a sign." Bee looked at Zoe in wonder. "How do you know what I said to Dr. Matthews?" "You learn the patterns after a while." "Like how?" "Like how I know your feet are sore after standing in those heels all night." Zoe patted her lap. "Let me rub them for you." Zoe's posture changed along with her demeanor. She gestured for Bee to come closer. Bee held her breath, bit her lip, then lifted her feet and set them brazenly in Zoe's lap. Zoe smiled and pressed her thumb over Bee's sole. Her hands were firm, but welcome, like the comforting press of gravity. You'd find the tale of the allos familiar, too. Bee felt her ears burn, remembering how the instrument fit between Zoe's lips. "Tell it to me." Long ago, there were two lovers, a sculptor and a goddess. The sculptor was lauded as one of the most skilled in all of Athens. She massaged at Bee's calf. She carved her sculptures with a delicacy that made them seem alive and painted them so beautifully they were mistaken for gems. The goddess loved both the sculptor and her creation so much she had the marbles ensconced in her temples. Who were they? Bee needed to know. Part of her felt like she already did. The goddess's name was Athena, and the sculptor, Medusa. Bee's mouth popped open gently as Zoe's hands worked the tension from her legs. She clasped one of her hands over Zoe's and moved the woman's hand onto her thigh. Zoe shuddered, moving closer. Their story isn't told anymore. A lot of self-important men decided Medusa's transformation was Athena's punishment for defiling her temple, that the goddess helped Perseus kill her, and then made the first allos from her femurs. Zoe took Bee's other foot in her hands and worked her way back up. But I don't think an instrument like that was made from anything but love. Zoe's hand slid higher, tracing Bee's thighs with her fingertips. Bee tipped her head back and parted her legs invitingly. Why? Zoe's breath skimmed across Bee's throat. An instrument carved from the legs of her sculptor joined as two pipes that met at the goddess's mouth. Bee gasped as Zoe's fingers reached between her legs and stroked. Tell me the version of the myth that supports that, Bee demanded. Her eyes caught on Zoe's spiraling snake ear cuff, a wise serpent hidden in her hair, whispering in her ear like one of Athena's own. The rich emerald of its eyes made Bee's heart quiver with an emotion she didn't understand. Zoe smiled against her cheek. The one I like best, says Athena wove Medusa a spell to take whatever form made her feel safe. She used illusions when the old Olympians decreed her love a monster, tricking Perseus, his kingdom, and the gods. Her cousins helped her be convincing, and Medusa lived. Athena forged her a bangle in the shape of a serpent that made her look human for the rest of her days. When she passed, Athena cheated even Hades, tying Medusa's soul to her own so she would be reborn eternally. They say the sound that calls the lovers together is that of the aulos. Bee bit her lip, her eyebrows drawn together with one desire. She knew this story like a half-forgotten dream. She wanted to remember. Find out the rest of what happens in Bee's story, you can pick up a copy of Flame Tree Press's upcoming anthology, Myths, Gods, and Immortals Medusa. For more of my writing, feel free to follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Theresa Tyree, and my website, theresatyree.com. And remember to use the giveaway form. I'm giving away an EPUB of the first story I ever sold, which is a sapphic, spooky tale called Will of the Wisp. Thank you so much.
Thank you.